Hi, I'm Diane Adkins, Toltec teacher and author, and this is part 2 of my 3-part series around domestication. So as I shared in part 1, domestication is a Toltec concept that basically explains how we were raised, what we were told to believe, what we were told to be, act, do, think, how to act, what was right, what was wrong, and all of that basic early training is what Toltecs call domestication. Here's what we did with it. We took those rules and those beliefs and the agreements that we made, and they all go into what the Toltecs call our book of law. And that book of law gets really ingrained in us. We hear it over and over again until we begin to tell ourselves what the rules are. What to do to be a good kid, what to do to be a bad kid and get in trouble. And the challenge comes in that children, until about the age of 14 or 15, have not developed enough brain power, enough neural connections, and essentially the mental development to separate fact from fiction, to fully understand what they're learning. And so a lot of it is taken at face value. For young kids, our parents, our teachers, they're on par with God, and we're, again, those, sponges soaking everything up. So in that process, however, and remembering that we all want love and we all want acceptance, we all develop strategies in order to survive. Strategies that worked really well at 3 or 5 or 10 years old. So a quick overview of those strategies is you could elect to be a controller, and a controller basically runs the show. They learn that, hey, if I order my little sister around, she'll do what I say, I'll be happy, she'll get in trouble, I won't, life will be good. Another one is a pleaser. Pleasers, they go in and they make everybody else happy. Mom, let me do this, how can I do this? They have to get good grades. They want everyone to be happy so that they have love and they're accepted. Another strategy some of us do is called being a distractor. And distractors can be the life of the party. They will basically distract everybody else so nobody can focus on maybe what they did wrong or anything that they don't want you to see. So distractors are very creative, and they distract both themselves and other people. Another strategy for survival was an isolator. And isolators basically run and hide. They figure out of sight, out of mind, you can't hit what you can't see. And so, as a fourth strategy, that one's pretty good. So most of us have developed at least one. We may have several of these operating, but we tend to have a primary one. Some subcategories of strategies that we can get into are, well, myself, I was a rebel. I would be, keep controlling you or pleasing you while I rebelled against the rules and ran out the back door. Other people, they can become conformers, where it's like, okay, I'll do whatever you say, or I'll appear to do whatever you say, and I'll still go do what I want to do. So when we hit our teens with all of our strategies and our beliefs and our rules and our book of law, we suddenly encounter our peers, and we're developing the mental capacity to start thinking things through. We're also less sometimes under the thumb of our parents, and our heart starts to speak. Wow, I really want to do this, but hey, I was told I couldn't do that. So we start hitting our teens, and suddenly the world changes, and there are new rules. Our bodies are changing, our world is changing. Junior high school, and onward, things really get interesting. And what we find as we start making new rules is that we've got old rules back there that we may bury, and they may be buried, but we have buried them alive. They're still there, they're still operating. And what this does to all of us is it starts to develop what I call cognitive dissonance. Cognitive in the sense that it's a mental function, dissonance in the sense that it's discord, it's not working. So cognitive dissonance is what starts to arise as our old rules and our new rules start to basically work it out or not work it out, go to war inside of us. What can also happen is that we'll suddenly have, unexplained guilt or shame or fear arising because some of those old agreements and beliefs that were buried and they're in our subconscious and unconscious, they're still alive and operating. We buried them alive. So, for example, for myself, growing up, I was born in the 50s, was taught the standard Christian tradition, Christian belief structure, which absolutely frowned on sex before marriage. So then I hit, as a young teenager, into the 70s, and I was at the tail end of some of this. It was free love, love the one you're with, and those rules, for a lot of people, the new rules that, you're going to love the one you're with, were in complete contradiction to perhaps what was buried in there about, hellfire and brimstone and sin if you loved somebody before and you weren't married to them. So this creates cognitive dissonance, and out of that can arise serious feelings of shame and guilt that you may not remember. Because especially if you've buried it, if you learned it as a child, like myself, we went to church a lot as young kids, but then my parents fell away from taking us to church the older I got. So my training was really from, birth up until maybe 8 years old. And, the rest of the time, it wasn't about going to church. And so those rules, easily could have been buried somewhat. And so if I were to go do something like that, I would have a lot of sudden fear or guilt or shame about what I was doing, even if I thought it was correct and okay and not a bad thing. What happens as we're going through this, along with the domestication and learning our strategies, is we start to wear masks. So, for example, if the young boys were taught that they had to be strong and they had to be really successful, and yet they had a softer side. Maybe they wanted to write poetry or music and not go play sports or football. They may have had a family that said sports, football, be a lawyer. But inside of them, it was, no, I want to go study music or poetry and literature. And so what can happen is, or what does happen, is we create masks. And we put those masks on that say, okay, I'm going to pretend like I'm strong here to hide the fact that a young boy like that would have been taught that he was weak and bad. That he had to be strong, and if he wasn't strong, he wasn't good enough. And so masks get put on to hide that we're bad, to hide that we're not good enough, to hide that we're not what everybody else thinks that we are. And we wear those masks, we hire the masks, we marry the masks, we make friends with the masks, and it is exhausting. Plus, it's not really our truth or our highest integrity. So in this becoming, what happens from our domestication is we develop our strategies, and we do all of that for love and acceptance, and then we put on masks for any place that we feel we're not good enough. We want to hide. We don't want anybody to see that. If our goal is to be safe and to be loved and to be accepted, and if we truly feel differently than our predominant programming and domestication, we will put on a mask and fake it till we make it. All the while hiding inside of us what our truth is, how we truly feel. So I think everyone probably understands that stress is the #1 cause of disease in the United States, at least. This constant struggle, this wearing of masks, this holding up of strategies of trying to manipulate our reality to be accepted and to gain love is exhausting, and it is incredibly, incredibly stressful. And consequently, heart attacks, high blood pressure, depression, skin disorders, all sorts of things have arisen in our culture, in this culture today. They're incredibly more prevalent than they were even 50 years ago. So that's part of the effect of not holding to yourself, not living your truth, and of the domestication that says you're not good enough exactly the way you are. I'm here to tell you, you are good enough exactly the way you are, but I want you to go on to part 3 for the way out. Thank you.